Launched in 2014, Operation Car Wash began as an ordinary bust by prosecutors from the southern Brazilian city of Curitiba into what seemed to be a small money laundering scheme operating out of a gas station. Quickly, however, we realized there was nothing ordinary about Operation Car Wash. The investigation evolved into the biggest anti-corruption effort in Brazilian history, uncovering a network of corruption schemes that have put over 200 people in jail, including 2 former presidents, several state governors, members of Congress, and some of Brazil's richest businessmen.
Bigger than Watergate?
Much bigger. The amounts of bribes paid go up to about $2 billion.
5 years later, the operation has completely changed. Its leading judge decided to join the government. Federal prosecutors who worked with the operation were promoted, while investigators were named to top positions in the federal police. But that doesn't mean that the investigation has grown stronger. This week, we'll talk about the changing face of Operation Car Wash. My name is Gustavo Ribeiro, editor-in-chief of the Brazilian Report, and this is Explaining Brazil. Ewan Marshall, you cover politics for the Brazilian Report. Hi.
Hi, Gustavo.
Why has Operation Car Wash become such a staple in Brazil?
Well, first of all, we have to look at the people that it targeted, because Operation Car Wash, it went after high-profile politicians and billionaires, the people who were really in control of the political system for decades, but they always seemed to be somehow above the law. And for the first time, what Operation Car Wash did is it seemed to kind of break that glass ceiling that Brazilian citizens have of the impunity of people in office.
And how did investigators get to these people in the first place?
The very first target of the operation was a professional money launderer, a guy called Alberto Yusuf. And when he was caught, he cut a deal with the car wash prosecutors because he claimed that he was laundering money for political parties, and he also claimed that he had the proof.
So that led to prosecutors finding out about corruption within Petrobras, Brazil's state-controlled oil company, and how nearly all parties from the political establishment were morally bankrupt. They were financed with dirty money, right?
Yeah, so the early stages of the investigation mainly involved construction companies, the biggest construction companies in Brazil, who banded together to rig the auctions for Petrobras construction contracts in a form of a cartel. And along the way, they were greasing the palms of politicians and political parties. And this was such a deeply ingrained practice that some of these construction firms, they even had their own kind of specialized bribery departments with accounting and everything in their own offices.
And that would explain why Brazil's political system tried to attack Operation Car Wash from all angles. I mean, on both sides of the aisle, politicians have called these prosecutors and judges Jacobins, like radicals, and they accuse them of overstepping the boundaries and disrespecting many civil rights of defendants. Do they have a point?
Well, for years, Operation Car Wash has been accused of kind of overusing their strategy of pre-trial arrests as a kind of a bit of leverage to put pressure on defendants and try to make them collaborate with the investigators. Now, the former Workers' Party finance minister, a guy called Antonio Palocci, for example, he was kept in jail for over a year before he eventually flipped.
I think it's undeniable that Operation Car Wash is the most courageous anti-corruption effort in Brazilian history, but it's far from perfect. Another major point of criticism is the fact that prosecutors and judges often seem to be putting on a show, playing to the crowd.
Yeah, and this was definitely one of the main strategies of the operation. This wasn't just happening by coincidence. They wanted to use the media to kind of spark popular support, and by doing that put pressure on the political establishment. So what they would do is they would plan a big arrest, they would inform the media in advance, they would make sure that everything was on TV, and in the end the spectacle was always seems to be more important than the presumption of innocence.
We could say that the conviction and then the arrest of former President Lula was a turning point for Operation Car Wash, right? I mean, Lula was a vocal critic of the operation, and he was a sort of white whale for the prosecutors.
Well, yeah, so Lula was the most popular politician in the country, and he led a government that was marked by corruption allegations, but also at the same time a more independence for the judiciary. And the clashes between Operation Car Wash and Lula ended up taking a toll on the reputation of the investigation, because like in September, for example, last September, fewer people believed that the operation was impartial, that is to say that it treated all sides of the political spectrum equally.
Operation Car Wash still enjoys a lot of popular support. 86%, according to that survey, are on the side of the investigators, but that number used to be 95%. So in 1 year and a half, a 10-point drop is significant. What do you think?
Well, I definitely think there has been an element of certain parties or certain figures receiving special treatment, whether positive or negative, from Operation Car Wash. But at the same time, I think it goes a lot further than being just an anti-Workers' Party investigation. Because if we look at the influences for Operation Car Wash, it was based on the Manipuliti investigation in 1990s Italy, which ended up destroying most of the traditional parties and led to the election of Silvio Berlusconi. And here, it has severely damaged a lot of the classic structures in Brazilian politics, and now we have Jair Bolsonaro.
A far-right politician who ran on an anti-corruption platform. I mean, one of Bolsonaro's first moves was to name Sérgio Moro, the judge who headed the operation for 4 years, to be his Minister of Justice. Moro was the heart and soul of the operation, so does this mean that the investigation's heyday is already behind us?
Well, that might not be exactly true, because over the years, Operation Car Wash ended up spreading across Brazil. So it created branches in Brasilia, in São Paulo, and in Rio de Janeiro. And as we've seen in recent years with some developments in Operation Car Wash, the politics of Rio de Janeiro in particular seems to be a bottomless pit of corruption.
So could we say that Rio is the new gravitational center of Operation Car Wash?
Yeah, I think so. I think we could say that, because we have every living former governor of Rio has already been jailed at one point, and the Rio de Janeiro branch of Operation Car Wash also arrested Ike Batista, who was once Brazil's richest man, and most recently they locked up former President Michel Temer.
Temer has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. His arrest is part of a larger investigation into corruption and racketeering. It's led to the detention of several politicians and business leaders.
Although it was only for a couple of days.
Next, the new face of Operation Car Wash. Did you know that Brazil is the country with the second highest number of ransomware attacks in the world? That's when hackers try to steal your data and then ask for a ransom for their return. Perhaps the good people of Fast Help can help you avoid these unwelcome attacks. Fast Help is a Brasilia-based IT company that is focused on cybersecurity. Protect your business by teaming up with Fast Help. Go to fasthelp.com.br for more information on how to protect your company's virtual space. Back in 2016, and then again in 2017, Judge Sérgio Moro was asked if he would ever get into politics.
Não seria apropriado da minha parte postular qualquer espécie de cargo político.
He said he would cast doubt over the validity of his work as the head of anti-corruption operations. But then, after Jair Bolsonaro was elected president, Moro was one of his first cabinet appointees and now serves as Brazil's Minister of Justice. With Moro out, the new face of Operation Car Wash became Rio de Janeiro Judge Marcelo Bretas, who authorized the arrests of high-profile politicians such as former President Michel Temer. Bretas is not your stereotypical judge. He tried to pass off the image of being a young stud with a very active Instagram account filled with photos of him doing CrossFit, holding rifles at shooting ranges, and throwing veiled insults and not so veiled insults at the political establishment.
He does not waste an opportunity to position himself politically.
Ivar Hartmann is a law professor at Fundação Getúlio Vargas and holds a master's degree from Harvard.
Which is controversial to say the least, but more adequately put, inadequate for any judge, not just a judge handling Lava Jato cases, but any judge. This has raised concerns amongst other judges, as well as amongst the Brazilian civil society. So in that sense, for Brazilians, he has been around for a while. He has taken steps to demonstrate or to make sure that people understand his political tendencies go toward a more conservative stance. He wants to present himself as a more conservative judge that is in favor of family values, which is very much aligned with Jair Bolsonaro's platform.
Bretas has an abnormally active political persona. For example, he took a ride in Rio de Janeiro Governor Wilson Witzel's jet to attend Jair Bolsonaro's inauguration. And there are some who believe this is no accident.
Some people believe that the reason Judge Bretas has made such an effort to present himself and his political views very publicly is that he might be interested in running for office sometime soon. Judges in Brazil now seem to view this as more of an option than they did before. Though, to be fair, it is very risky for a judge to run for office, and a lot of times not worthwhile, because as a federal judge, Bretas has access to several prerogatives, to a very handsome pay.
It could also be a not-so-discreet way to bid for a seat on the Supreme Court. After all, Jair Bolsonaro is set to name at least 2 justices until 2022.
From an ideological alignment point of view, Bretas is certainly a good fit with President Bolsonaro's views on what the Supreme Court should do, and President Bolsonaro's views on fundamental elements of the law. So it is a possibility Bretas might be vying for a Supreme Court nomination.
If Judge Bretas goes to the Supreme Court or runs for office, it would mean Operation Car Wash became a very effective political trampoline. Next, the future of Operation Car Wash after its toughest defeat yet. This podcast is supported by FastHelp. FastHelp is a Brasilia-based IT company devoted to providing cybersecurity solutions. Looking to safeguard your company's virtual space? Protect your business by teaming up with FastHelp. Visit fasthelp.com.br for more information. 2019 was supposed to be the year of Operation Car Wash, as its poster boy became Minister of Justice. But reality has been quite different. The country's highest court decided that any cases involving electoral crimes should fall under the scope of the electoral justice system and not criminal courts. And this is crucial for Operation Car Wash.
There are 2 central practical impacts. One is Lava Jato cases going to a different branch of the Brazilian judiciary, which is run by different judges with different backgrounds and different areas of expertise, and very little experience in money laundering cases and corruption cases, which are at the heart of car wash operations. So that's this change going forward is one central impact. The other one is actually looking back. There's now a threat to rulings already issued on cases that the Supreme Court now has said should, from now on, go through the electoral justice system.
Supreme Court justices argue that the decision won't favor impunity by no means, but the truth is that defendants, such as former President Lula, have already demanded to be retried by electoral courts, and we wonder why.
As a defendant, I would prefer a judge that has less expertise and less experience with more complex cases that and more complex crimes that I'm being accused of. Because, of course, in order to convict, a judge would have to be absolutely certain that he or she understands the evidence and has found that evidence to be robust. So, all else equal, as a defendant, I would prefer a judge that is not entirely sure about the evidence, that doesn't completely understand all of the evidence, and therefore, I think it's a better outlook. It's a more convenient outlook for defendants of the car wash operation and other criminal cases in Brazil if these cases go through the electoral court system.
Following the decision, Operation Car Wash made its most notorious bust this year, arresting former President Michel Temer and one of his former cabinet members. Some interpreted this as a direct reaction to the Supreme Court ruling, but legal scholar Ivar Hartmann is not one of these people.
Well, that theory is certainly very appealing. The problem with that theory, or that explanation to what happened, is that it would require all of the substantial evidence that was offered, that has been offered against Temer, to be collected and put together and structured and presented in a few days, in less than a week, which is unlikely at best. So it's basically impossible for all of the case against Temer to have been built in less than a week by the prosecutors and the federal police. So to me, that interpretation of what happened simply does not make any sense.
In one aspect, though, the ruling did have an impact on Temer's arrest warrant. Federal Judge Marcelo Bretas bent over backwards to say that 1. The case wasn't connected to electoral crimes to keep it in criminal courts, and 2. The case had no connection to other Operation Car Wash related crimes, which are overseen by Justice Gilmar Mendes. Justice Mendes has been the most vocal opponent of the operation, and he recently suggested that the prosecutors working for the operation are immoral.
It is a concern with what Justice Gilmar Mendes might do in a case like this. And that is because he has a track record of issuing rulings that favor people close to him when he should refuse himself, and also issuing rulings in cases that he previously commented on publicly, which is patently illegal under Brazilian law. A judge cannot comment on a case that he or she will later try. So Justice Mendes' track record warrants this type of concern, and it's certainly understandable that Judge Bretas would have concerns about Justice Mendes' impartiality. However, of course, Judge Bretas should not engage in any kind of procedural theatrics and strategies to dictate where cases that go through him will later be tried.
This podcast was written and prepared by me, Gustavo Ribeiro, and Ewan Marshall, who also edits the final script. Maria Marta Bruno produced this show. If you like this podcast, rate us on any platform you may be listening to Explaining Brazil. It takes only a second, and it's really important for us. And take a look at our website, it's Brazilian.report. Every day we have new content about Brazilian politics, finance, and society. We also got exclusive newsletter services if you want to be briefed about what's going on in Brazil before starting your day. Subscribe now to our free trial and enjoy all of our content for 7 days. And it's really free. You don't have to submit any credit card information whatsoever. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter, Our handle is @BrazilianReport. And that's all for now. See you next week.